Design Leader Insights is brought to you by Fuego UX. Fuego UX is a leading UX research, strategy, and design consultancy.
Hey, Jen, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Hey, Alex, nice to be here.
Yeah, for sure. And to get started, can you give us a little background on your journey in UX?
Sure. Yeah, I started off just being really obsessed with art and design back in like high school days, which led me into graphic design. And I'm dating myself here, but that was at the time where you actually use pens and paper and pencils. And throughout my journey in that, I kind of found myself getting more into educational technology. I really love the space of thinking about how could technology help people learn, which led me into going for a degree in education with a focus on instructional technology. And so within that space, while it might have seemed kind of narrow of like this is about instructional technology, it really lended itself to just thinking about the user experience, or back in those days, like instructional design and interaction design, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and so that just kind of helped me get into the tech space, pursuing the design. And I actually was a researcher at one point as well, just really understanding the users. And from there, I was able to go from eBay and then into Google, where at Google I've been here for quite some time now, and was always an IC designer and then design manager. And then about 10 years ago or so, I started getting into the field of accessibility and design.
That's awesome. That's a super cool journey. Let's talk about accessibility. Yeah, you were telling me you lead some efforts that go like truly across the entire organization. I'd love to kind of learn about that and how you manage that process.
Yeah. So currently, I lead a UX org that focuses on accessibility, and now just somewhat recently, product inclusion, equity, and internationalization. But most of my experience has been in accessibility, and we are a horizontal team. So we are focused on creating standards, and this can come in the shape and form of programs and practices and guidelines. And our goal is to develop those as a center of excellence, but then get adoption across the company to actually make our true vision happen and have all of our products accessible. So the one thing that I've really come to learn is that UXers and like UX as a discipline has like the greatest mindset to really drive these things forward, and in many different facets. If you can really impact how UXers, like researchers and designers, writers, like how they think about this, and approach the design problems in a more inclusive way, it sets the stage for the entire product team of like, oh, we are focusing on these users, and just helps kind of show that vision of where this product or this experience could go.
Yeah, does a lot of that come from studying how various teams will actually like digest the information and fit it into their process, or like are you finding that when I think of Google, I think of there's definitely a lot of legacy products, but then there's things like AI and things that are moving so fast, and engineers that are like, let's get this out, or I guess engineering managers, like how do you get people to slow down and say, well, wait, let's make sure everyone can use this?
Trying to better describe, like potential impact or harms or anything like that, but like really get in there and describe it, like from a visual standpoint, or like have that vision very clearly depicted, based on obviously user needs. So it's the idea of like getting there, understanding what the user needs, as well as just like how the technology is developing, and just show like, yes, this is very powerful, very exciting. And there's a ton of interesting and impactful positive things that can come from this, and like how AI can help us evolve assistive technologies. Like there's a ton of stuff there, but we also have to just be in mind of like, there's also these considerations we need to make along the way.
How do you like educate other departments that this is needed? Like obviously designers, UX, like typically pretty aware of that, but I imagine you come across teams that aren't aware of, the stats around what percentage of your users have,
Yeah.
an impairment that you need to design around or code around.
You can start with one thing I mentioned is like creating this compelling vision of like what could an end state be, just like from a user's perspective, even if it's just one user, just thinking more holistic of like, hey, if we were able to achieve this, look at how this person's life or critical user journey could improve,
Yeah.
especially comparing it to today. But then the other thing, again, where I feel it is unique to the horizontal initiatives is around this notion of really understanding like the business needs and goals as well as like how can you motivate individuals on the teams regardless of role, because the one thing I've certainly learned is it needs to be a top down and bottoms up, or you need that support from the top and the bottom to be successful. And there's a lot of ways and messages and data that you can pull in to kind of make that cohesive story and vision. And again, I think that cohesive, like that storytelling is where UX can be really valuable in driving that home to get that buy-in across the company.
Jen, I think like there's some parallels between what you have built and design systems. Like design systems are oftentimes horizontally used across multiple teams and departments to ensure consistency and often include an accessibility component as well. But one of the stats around design systems that's always it's still true. I think like 60% of enterprise design systems don't succeed, and a lot of it is due to adoption. So how do you drive adoption of the accessibility standards for, the entire org essentially?
One way, which you mentioned design systems, is by baking accessibility into, the tools and processes that teams are already using, which is critical from a scaling perspective. Like we have to start there. The other is when we're talking about things like we often talk about how important it is to start at the edges when you're thinking about who you're designing for and the use cases or user journeys, because it's been proven like if you start there, you end up solving a lot of issues and challenges for all the users and just making a better experience across the board. And to get people on board with that, like one thing we definitely learned is you can't just write a playbook and expect people to run with it. Instead, we do a few things. One is actually follow that ourselves so that we have compelling case studies to show like, hey, look, this actually lended itself to a better outcome. The other is we have started doing this a little bit more just recently, once we've kind of defined what we think is a good, practice of a way to start at the edges, we'll partner with product teams on a short term, but like a deep dive engagement basis to actually show them like maybe within a design sprint or, actually developing a feature or something like that. This is how you actually practice what we're preaching. And it obviously it's so much more effective because they're seeing how it applies to their world and they can, then drive it. And then for us, it's actually that type of engagement is extremely useful because then it feeds back to our team as the center of like, hey, here's how, people are adopting your standards and here's what could be improved. And it's just like this flywheel effect of learning from each other. So it's been pretty exciting.
Fascinating for sure. Jen, I have a question, switching gears a little bit. What advice do you have for new designers and researchers that are entering the space today?
Good question as well. Selfishly, I would say learn about like inclusive design processes and accessibility design guidelines. I just, and there's definitely organizations that are working on baking that into education and curriculum and universities and stuff and programs, but it's not there completely. And I'm telling you all, like the more you know that and just it's part of your everyday practice, it will still, maybe this is a good thing, maybe not a great thing, it still kind of sets you apart is a valuable asset to the team. And then in the end, though, I think the most important thing is that it really allows you to deliver just really compelling and amazing products or services that you'd be proud to point back to.
Jen, thank you so much for joining the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.